We're on. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our committee meetings, August the 2nd, 2022. I'd like to welcome, we have our police chief with us, Chief Poirier. We have our CAO, Gordon McFarlane. And we have our Director of Finance is with us, Kristen Dunsford. And we have all councillors. Brian McFeely, Councillor McFeely, will be coming online here shortly. And we have our electrical engineer, Greg Goody, with us. And Brian Harlick is on the controls here. He's also the Acting Director of Human Resources, so he's got a busy schedule. And CAO Gordon McFarlane is the Acting CAO. And I believe that's all we have. And I'd like to welcome our viewers on YouTube and our members from the media as well on YouTube. And we have Deputy Mayor McColeman and all councillors. So thank you very much, and we'll call the meeting to order. And the first committee meeting, we'll turn it over to the Chair of the Police and Fire and Emergency Services, Councillor Ramsey. And your microphone works, I believe. It's not lighted yet. No.
Thank you, Your Worship, and welcome everybody this afternoon. The first thing on the agenda is Bylaw Officer, and we were just kind of hoping for an update from our CAO, if that's possible. Thank you.
Yep, sure. We actually have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with an individual who does some kind of private contracting for bylaw enforcement in some other communities. So we've met with this person before, and I think it was last spring. And at that time, it didn't kind of the stars didn't align, but we're hopeful after tomorrow's discussion we should be able to figure something out on that. Under our new, like as you all know, a lot of the bylaw complaints that take up significant time are the property complaints, the long grass type complaints. And under our new unsightly premises bylaw, those complaints, the process to have them dealt with has changed, and they don't have to come back to City Council for a resolution if and when a property owner doesn't abide by the order. So as under the previous bylaw, a complaint came in, we visited, we said, you know, you had a certain amount of time to get your grass cut. If that didn't happen, then that had to come back to council, and council passed a resolution giving staff permission to go on the property and get the work done. Under the new bylaw, which is in line with the Municipal Government Act, once an order is given to a property owner, if the work's not done in the time that's set out in the order, then staff automatically have the legal authority to get that, schedule that work and get it done. So that should hopefully really speed up that process. Again, as you know, most likely 95% of those complaints get dealt with after a visit by an officer or a bylaw officer. So, but for the ones that drag on, and historically we've always had a few that drag on and seems to take weeks and weeks to get them dealt with, this new change in the bylaw should really speed that up. So. Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you, CAO, for that update on that. And I think one of the things that maybe is important for our residents to know is that in our budget there is money for commissionaire, so it's kind of not going to cost the city any more money. It's kind of nice that we're going to be able to use that money from commissionaire to look after this and just take some of the pressure off police services regarding these small complaints, because they do take time, and we know that they're not, you know, a big deal, but they are a big deal when it's taking time away from the officers who are just so very busy right now. And thank you for that. And is there any questions from anybody for CAO around this?
Just a comment. Obviously, I'm a fan of bylaw enforcement officer, and think it's a great idea and a great way to free up some resources of our current police force. But I am curious, is this just a plan to sort of short-term plan? Are we still hoping to hire a bylaw officer for our city, or is the plan right now just to see how this goes and go from there? Because currently not only do we not have a bylaw officer, we don't have parking enforcement for the most part. We have no parking enforcement throughout our city, which can be a issue in the downtown area, businesses, that sort of thing. So I'm just curious, I really have always thought that those two mesh really well together and could utilize each other's resources to do a few jobs. So
Yeah.
my hope is that we would eventually get that way.
So it is a challenge to find the right candidate and the right kind of skill set, demeanor and background experience for someone for this type of position, but the current plan is to hopefully move forward with the individual that we're chatting with tomorrow. And they would, as well as, I mean, they would also do likely some parking enforcement during that time. And we'll see how that goes. We won't be, I guess the best thing I can tell you is the current plan is to see how that goes. If it works out well, then we may be able to expand the amount of time or.
Right. Kind of like baby steps, and it's a good move forward. It's a good move forward to council. I think we all agree, and we've all wanted a bylaw officer for some time, and so it's really, really nice that we're moving forward on this. And does anyone else have any questions on the bylaw?
Just one question, sorry, I didn't jump
No,
ahead.
you're good, yeah.
The timing again, Mr. McFarland, did you mention when this process, if it's in place, when it would be in place?
Well, we're meeting with the individual tomorrow,
Oh, okay.
and then
Yeah.
kind of likely as soon as possible.
Okay.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Snow and CAO Rob, or Gordon. All habits are hard to break. Anyway, the next item on the agenda for police services, Glen Drive and McGee and South Drive. And so I'm going to pass it over to Councillor McDougall because he has those items on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. There's some pictures here provided. I had these 2 or 3 items on for the last couple of meetings, and last week the chief and I took a drive around to some of these areas so we could see firsthand the issues that we were talking about. The first one on the screen here is South Drive. This is driving down south, just as you pass the old tracks. This is McGee.
Coming towards Summerside.
Coming towards Summerside. This is McGee on the right-hand side. And what's happening here is we need to get a crosswalk across here, whether it's to paint a crosswalk and just the flags or whatever. What's happening is most of the kids are picked up around the McGee-Tupper area, but there's some of them that have to walk across the street and pick the bus up on the other side now. So this was brought up to me late during the school season, and I put it on here. So I think we need to look at, and the street is already ready to accept on the opposite side of south, on the right-hand side of south, or left-hand side of south. There's the when you walk from the sidewalk, it goes directly across the street, and there's a dip in the sidewalk where there should be the crosswalk. So I think it's just a matter of painting the crosswalk there and some signage, because school season is coming upon us again. So anyway, that's just my request on South Drive, and maybe the chief has something to say on it. But
Well, thank you, Councillor. We certainly will discuss this with Greg as well.
Yeah.
Director Greg is sitting here today, and you are right, there is a need for one there, I believe.
okay, if we could leave that with the chief and Municipal Services.
Okay, and then you can move into Glen Drive, I
Yeah,
think.
Glen Drive. So what we did is there's been 2 or 3 spots that I'm having real issues with speeding, One is McKenzie, and I had just had discussed with, when the chief and I took the drive, we went through McKenzie, and I don't think I have to remind too many people the amount of traffic that goes in and out of McKenzie, and there's constant complaints about speeding on McKenzie. The other area is, you're looking at it, it's Glen Drive, and this is coming up from the Linklater area. There's trees there that need to be trimmed, but there's also there's a 40 speed zone there. But by the time they get to the corner, it's all of a sudden you have to slam the brakes on because you're right amongst the houses, right? And they're requesting that a speed bump be put there prior to the corner there. And the chief and I had a look at it, and it's an issue. The most of the issue is coming from the Linklater area, and I'm not saying it's the people from Linklater, I'm saying it's everybody, but it's the bigger trucks that are coming along there, they're going a good tilt by the time, and it's blinded there. There's also new families that have moved in on the corner, and there's kids there, and it's an issue. And yeah, and the other one I talked about was, if you want to roll that up, you can, I think there's 2 or 3 pictures there. Yeah, see, it comes up, all of a sudden you're right there, and that's the sharp, right along there is, I would suggest the speed bump, because see how blind it is there.
Are you suggesting cut the trees back as well?
The chief and I had talked, and I think we need to have the Greens people have a look at that and see if they can trim those up or something. But I'll let the chief talk on it. We had a good discussion on it, but yeah.
Are you thinking a speed bump or a speed hump? And because the humps are bigger, and they seem to be more effective. They certainly were on Elm Street, and I don't know for a busy street like that, Bruce,
Yeah,
if that's something that you might.
I'm not sure which, whatever's going to slow them down.
I know it sounds silly, but it does make a difference.
I don't know whatever's going to slow them down besides the cement wall or whatever, but it's, those are areas. So I have that Glen Drive, the west and the McGee Drive, that, not McGee Drive, I'm sorry, Mackenzie Drive, that we really they're in need of speed bumps or something. We're having a terrible issue with speed all over the city, as far as I'm concerned. Whether they're speeding, like I was explaining, I came back from kayaking yesterday, and there was a car pulled into West Drive, and I was at the stop sign on East Drive, and the car went around the corner probably at 40, and it's only at 50. So the time I got to the top of the hill, the red light flashed up on the sign, which was doing 72, and those are the complaints that are coming in. So those areas, I just want to have the police look at them, and if there's recommended for speed bumps, then I think we need to do it, because I hate the thoughts of putting in a speed bump, but people are crying for them because they need to get the traffic slowed down. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce, and Councillor McColman, I think, and is that it? Do you have yours on? I can't see. Councillor McColman.
I guess what I'm just wondering about, I realize the importance and the significance of safety concerns for all of the residents. I think we have 8 wards, and there's many concerns over crosswalks and painting and maintenance. So I guess what I'm wondering, and I don't want to, dismiss the importance of what you're speaking of, but I'm just wondering if this should not be something that we discuss at our budget planning and allocations, which will be coming up later on in the fall. We have passed the budget for maintenance. I'm sure Municipal Services has a list, consistent list of the ones that they're maintaining and working on, because I know Certainly, I have some in Ward 6 where there's been near misses, there's mobility issues, there's crosswalk concerns. So I just think we need to be a little bit aware that we're in budget process, and if people hear this and think, well, we're doing this in one area, then we're going to start getting calls because it's getting close to the school year. People are saying, what about my ward, what about? So I just want to bring that up, that we need to be mindful of that we are in a budget process, and maybe this needs to be, you know, as you say, having it looked at and recommendations coming forth from Summerside Police Services and Municipal Services. But we may not necessarily have the full amount of money to do everything right now when we're already budget process going forward. So I'm just pointing that
No.
out as finance chair.
And I appreciate that. But we did have traffic calming budget item in the budget this year. And, you know, if there's money left there, then I put in a request.
Sure.
If you just want to deny it, then fine.
And Councillor Bruce, I certainly respect that. I respect with every councillor that there's needs. And I just think that if it's in the budget and it can be looked at and afforded in this process, but if not, we need to kind of think about next budget process too, because there's an election coming and council may change somewhat too. Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, just to follow up in regards to Mackenzie Drive, I did get a call there, and I was out a couple of days ago and met with the resident, and it is a problem there in Mackenzie Drive, and he was wondering about those flashing, and I think you had mentioned it, Councilman McDougall, those flashing signs that when your car is coming, your speed, and that seems to work really well. Now, the ones that we have, are they mounted permanently, or can they be moved around? And I think they used to be on that street someplace, but with the construction as well there, and the construction trucks coming left, right, and center, which is great to have the construction on Potter and in that general area, but speed bumps or humps, or whatever you want to call them, with tractor trailers and construction vehicles hitting them, and you know, then you got the bang of the thump and everything else. So what about the speed signs? Do we have any that we could put there?
Your
The
Worship,
flashing ones,
Your Worship, we had a temporary one. We'd moved from location to location, but it's out of service now. So we're looking at next year's budget now to get another one. We do have the ones that are pole mounted. They're quite a bit of work to change them around if we had to, but then somebody else may complain if we take it down. So
yeah. What's the cost of one of the portable ones?
the portable ones, they're several $1,000s now.
As in 2 or 19?
No, we're looking at between 8 and 10,000. They have them now on trailers, so a half-ton truck can tow them, you know, and be a great help. But the ones we had before, we had to lug them on the back, and Municipal Works was always helpful with that aspect. But we don't have a portable one now, I'm trying to say.
Can you rent them? I guess for the next couple of months?
Certainly not around here, I mean.
Well, you can't rent them on the trucks, you were saying?
No, the newer ones come on a trailer, so they're just
Oh,
towed
okay.
behind a trailer or a truck.
But it is a real concern there in Mackenzie Drive, and I've been out there a few times
Yes.
myself and noticed it. And then when I got the call, I went out to meet with the people, and it is a concern there. And I know your officers probably use the radar there as well.
Yes, that's
And,
correct.
But whomever brought it up here, whether it was Councillor McColman or Councillor McDougall or Deputy Mayor, it is a concern in that area, as well as other areas too. And
And-
I'm sure your department will do whatever is possible to have it under control.
And also, Your Worship, you have to keep in mind with the construction going on, a lot of truck traffic coming from the construction on
Yeah.
Potter Street, so it may slow down after, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
And we know the situation that happened in Maple, was it? There was a request to have a speed hump or bump, and there was one put there, but then it was in the wrong place in the opinion of some people. But if you move it, you're just moving the bang or the thump from it in front of somebody else's house. So it's difficult, but we do have a situation that I'm sure your department will get it under control.
That's correct.
Yes, and I think as Norma says, there are many situations throughout Summerside because I'm getting emails for my ward, and I send them off to our CAO and our police chief, because there's problems everywhere, and hopefully we can get them all fixed up bit by bit. But Councillor Snow, you have something?
Yeah, I'm just wondering with the ones brought forward today, if, I remember a while ago, Aaron, Tech Services Director Aaron, brought forward, we did a whole study on traffic calming, and there was a number of different traffic calming measures we could use, whether or not it was narrowing of streets by using smaller concrete barrier type things. I was over in Halifax a few weeks ago with my daughter, and there was lots of areas around that city where you can tell they just really tried to narrow the traffic down to slow them down. And as much I'm a speed bump fan in specific areas, Elm Street School has worked really well, but then of course we've had some others that we had some pushback on because it does cause other issues. I just wonder if it's not time that we take a stab and try a few of the other measures that Director Aaron had brought forward. Wait for a recommendation on all these things, but I'd be open to what other options there may be, because
Add that too.
we've been doing speed bumps, we've been doing the speed signs, and we're still coming back with the same issue. There's always gonna be speeders, that's the way of the world, but we can do whatever we can to try to slow them down, that'd be great.
So, Councillor, we may know soon, I believe Councillor Campbell is working with Tech Services now for Craig, and I think that's coming soon, so
Perfect.
we'll have an idea if they're gonna work or not.
Yep, great, thanks.
Just one further
Yeah,
question.
I was just going to say that.
Sorry. I was just gonna, sorry, Councillor McDougall was ahead, I think.
No, I just wanted to point out that if there's a will to put the speed bump, whether it's permanent or whatever, there's one of the residents has said, fine, put it in front of their place, so I'll give you that number if you just want it.
Okay, and my comment was just gonna be follow up what Deputy Mayor, the Finance Chair, had mentioned, following the budget. But I wonder, is there anything in the budget that we could find that wouldn't throw the budget off to get one of these portable signs for this year? I mean, I guess that would be up to finance to see if it could be found within the system to, I mean, it seems like with these many complaints, it seems like a long time to wait till next April to get something in place. But if the dollars could be found within the present budget, I'm just thinking out loud here, I guess.
Yeah, we do have money in the budget, and we'll take a look at all the areas noted and see what we can do as soon as possible within budget.
Yeah.
And if there are, like y'all know, if there are other issues that come up, just pass them along to me, and we'll try to get them addressed as soon as possible.
As was mentioned too by the Finance Chair, the 8 wards, with the portable one, you can sort of move it around the 8 wards to see if we can get it under control. Welcome, Mr. J.P. DeRosier.
And thank you. And I in closing, I know how hard police services are working, and I want to extend that thank you, Chief Poirier. And I know the women and the men over there are very busy, and it's a busy time in Summerside right now, and people are flitting around and probably driving faster than they should, and we're getting all kinds of complaints. So thank you for what you people are doing, and hopefully we can get something worked out. Thank you for coming in and spending time with us.
I will mention this too, with the motorcycles, we had so many of them around. I never got one call or text or email about speed
No.
from the motorcycles. They're all very responsive.
Me either. You're on, Dave. You're
Yeah,
good.
neither did us, Your Worship. They were all very polite and understanding, and we gave them escort outside the city, and they were very appreciative.
Thank you.
Was wonderful. Yeah. Thank you. So this meeting is adjourned.
Okay, who's next? Is Councillor McFeely online yet? Welcome, Councillor McFeely. Did you have any questions? Any questions on the last topic?
No, I'm good. I caught most of the conversation there, so no, I'm good.
Okay,
I'm about 15 minutes, 20 minutes away.
no problem. You can follow us online, and we'll move over to Municipal Services. Councillor McDougall and the street sweeper. Is that what you're going to talk about?
No.
Oh, you're not.
Street sweeper is here in action, and Joe loves it, so it must be working good. I'll call the meeting for the Municipal Services to order. Just have one item on the agenda, and it's line painting. And I'm not sure who put that on.
On what?
Oh, Justin, okay, can you
Councillor,
follow up?
Engineer Greg, do you want to come forward by the microphone? And I believe he has a question for you.
Oh, yeah.
Or you might want to answer if I might.
Okay, thanks, Councillor McDougall. I guess this was carried over, I think, from earlier in July, and I don't know if there will be any action items or directives from this, but I wanted to keep it on just sort of to give the public some information, if nothing else. As I was speaking with a few people over the last few weeks who have brought some things to my attention, I just wanted to bring it to all of your attention and staff's attention. And I know I was emailing back and forth with our CAO Gordon, and I think he's got it under control, going to handle it to some degree, depending on what might be involved. But there's just a couple of instances from a couple of different areas in the city, and Brian has one of them up on the screen here now. I was in at speaking with 3 of the staff at Jewelry Plus a couple weeks ago. Of course, they're on the intersection of Water Street and Spring Street, and where their counter is, they have a direct view right up the one-way Spring Street, that little stretch that's between Water and First. It's kind of a unique little intersection, whereas it's similar to the one, I guess, over across from the shipyard, where it's just a small little strip that's one way. And they told me that they notice quite regularly people turning south, going the wrong way, and they're meeting people that are turning off of Water Street, and they're you know, all but colliding. And they told me to go up and check the signs that are there. There's a street view on the screen now from 2013 that says it's got the do not enter and the red circle with the line through it. That bottom sign is no longer there. There's no lines. There's not even a one-way sign, standard one-way sign. The only indication at this time that that's a one-way, other than, you know, taking the hint that the traffic is parked that way, is the small little do not enter sign at the top of that post. And it's faded as it is. So I know there's many factors that go into line painting, such as, you know, it has to be the right time of year, right temperatures. Line painting equipment has to be available. There's environmental concerns with the paint that fades, but this is one of those places where maybe arrows on the pavement, in addition to even a standard or 2 standard one-way signs, would really help that intersection. No sooner than one of these ladies told me about it, I looked out and it actually happened. Somebody ripped around the corner off of Water Street and met somebody turning the wrong way. And so that, just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. I did email Gord, and he said leave it with them, and they'll see what can go on there when the time comes. But that's something that could turn into something that we don't want to happen. So there's that, so we can have a little chat about that, or I can move on to the next one, whatever.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we'll make sure we get the sign replaced as soon as possible, and we'll get tech services to take a look and see if there's an option to bump out that sidewalk similar to what we did over on,
Right.
it was bottom of First Street.
Yeah.
First?
Make it a single lane,
Well, there's, yeah,
single lane exit.
Yeah.
we'll see what we can do there.
There's no, I've never even seen the 2 lanes in use at one time, just because of the parking there kind of narrows it up. And
We had some similar complaints over in front of the old co-op feed building, condo, and
Yeah.
so we'll get some pricing on what that would entail too, and that type of fix would come forward potentially for budget for next year, but the signage piece for sure will get done as soon as possible.
Perfect. Councillor Adams?
I just have 2 quick questions. Okay, so the upper part of Spring is not a one-way, like to the left of this picture. So why is that a one-way?
That was my question. I was going to ask that question.
What's the reasoning behind it, I guess? Why not just make it
At this point.
2-way?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's been one way all my life, I have no idea.
But so were the other ones, right? But they're not anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's parking on that west side of the street. But yeah, and it's not that,
Yeah.
not that wide.
Yeah, because we made First Street is now both ways, and that used to be one way,
Yeah.
right? Just wondering if maybe that could be looked at whenever tech services is
Sure.
looking at the other option too.
Sure.
Good idea. Oh, I'm sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
that's okay. That was exactly my question as well, Carrie, because years ago, and growing up in some, they were all one way there, right? So it was easy. It all made sense. But, what?
Said you're a little older than me.
I know, right? I know I am, Gordon. But now, like, that is the only one that is one way going there, right? So I guess that would make sense to me to just open them all up. Unless it's not wide enough, and we just wouldn't have parking on that street, but there's lots of parking in the parking lot or in behind the other, like in behind the jewelry store or up on the other side of that little parking lot that's on this side of the bank. Anyway, that's what I was thinking as well. Might save a lot of money and a lot of work by just opening it up. Anyway, look at that.
Thank you.
We'll take a look for sure.
And Councillor Bruce,
Oh,
just
sorry.
a little bit on the history of that specific street, I believe, for those of you who are much younger. Clovey's and Andy's, the restaurant used to be there, as well as many people frequented the French Social Club when it was there, so there was a lot of activity around there, and maybe that had something to do with it. I didn't go to the French Social Club,
Toby's jug.
Toby's Jug, but there was a lot of, things happening in that area.
Yeah, thank you. Justin, did you have something else?
Nothing more on that location, there's one
Okay.
other one that I just
I'm
wanted to
just gonna make a
update.
comment on that one there, if I could,
Okay,
then before you
yeah.
move on. I wouldn't suggest that you remove the parking there by the bank.
Aye, yeah.
Just my thoughts. I know I was talking when the Nova Scotia guy called me, the president of the bank said they're moving uptown because they needed more parking. So we start taking half a dozen parking spaces away beside that bank. And plus, they're not only parking spaces, they're not for the bank, but for the downtown. But maybe it's wide enough where you could still have two-way street plus the parking. So all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Justin.
Thank you, Councillor McDougall. The second thing, just to bring to, I've had many over the last, I think I'd say 3.5, 4 weeks on this one. I know the picture on the screens from 2018, those arrows are no longer there. They've faded, as they do, as we mentioned earlier, the environmental products and scheduling and so on. Especially now that there's tourists, I guess a lot of folks are in that left turning lane. And for anybody that can't see the screen on YouTube or Brian in your vehicle, we're just talking about the left-hand turn lane heading north on Granville onto Pope Road extension that goes up beside the Dollarama.
Rama.
Yes. Well, it is like the $3 Rama now. So a lot of people are in that left-hand turning lane and they're going straight. And I guess the assumption is it makes more sense to have the far right lane as a straight and right lane and the far left lane as a straight lane. I don't know what the reasoning is, but I mean, everybody comes from different places and they're used to different traffic patterns. But I guess the suggestion was, in addition to freshening up the lines, which I know we try to do when we can, where we can, is to possibly add some signage, either hanging off of the traffic light or wherever may be possible, just to kind of indicate which lane goes where and which lane you should be in, depending on where you're going. And that's that location. I've heard a couple of reports of people, again, just kind of going straight when they're in that left turning lane. And I mean, they're heading right into oncoming traffic. I don't know what the thought is, but
Yeah.
you know, it happens. And
I think that's my word, and I was promised they'd update the painting when we're putting asphalt down there right now, just up ahead of it. They figured that would track over everything, so I think you'll be happy with the results in a week or two.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Campbell. Did you have something?
Can I just ask a quick question? Okay, so left, straight, right. How come those two, the far right lane isn't a turn or go straight? Is there reasoning behind it? I'm just thinking like one lane going uptown is,
Yes, there was. It was about traffic progressing predominantly right going into the medical center, Sobeys.
oh, okay,
When the
yep.
traffic study was done, Tech Services decided to lay it out the way because of volume of traffic from the study, so that's why the lanes were picked there. There was a discussion via internally about looking at another review, but at this time, especially with the addition of the new possible medical complex as well, so
Yeah.
decided to leave it there for now,
Yeah.
was the discussion internally with Technical Services review.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, thank you. No, okay, I couldn't see you, like, go ahead.
Thanks, Bruce. I guess question for you, Greg, or CAO. For the last 4 years, I think every year we've had the same discussion around line painting, crosswalks. How can we get it faster? How can we get these things done, especially in these areas where, you know, we're talking about tourists now, but we have another month and a half of tourists. We probably missed 2 months where we had tourists in our city and having some confusion. I'm wondering, is there any, and I think we've discussed it before, but is there any portion of our line painting, crosswalk painting that could be possibly contracted out? Our municipal work staff are doing everything. They're painting lines, they're sweeping streets, they do a lot. And I think the reality is they're just really thin in order to meet our budgets. And I'm wondering if we're keep trying to improve, but keep doing the same thing over and over, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So is there, and this is just to maybe, if there's a possibility to bring something back, if it's doable, on, you know, here's what we can do to get main areas of our city, some crosswalks, whatever we deem priorities done even quicker than we currently are. And then, of course, that frees up time for other stuff they need to do.
If I could just throw something in there too, I think your staff are presently unionized, so you would have to deal with that if that happened to come up. And I know we talked about this during budget time, that, you know, if you needed more help, it would have to be in the budget. So it goes back to what Councillor McColeman said there a while ago. I know you only get so many staff members, and we said, if you need more staff, it'll have to be put in the budget so the streets can get painted more quickly. So that's the kind of the situation we're in there right now. But they are unionized in my, as far as I know. So contracting out, whether they could work around that, I don't know.
I think probably it's time for a formal update to council as a whole as to where we're at with all the line painting in city for starters.
Yeah.
Just on that, there's, you know, we do crosswalks, we do some lanes, line painting, but predominantly center line painting is done with the province paint truck due to the speed, but we're also a little behest upon their scheduling. This year's also been particularly challenging because we ran out of white paint supply. Even though we had ordered it earlier in the year in January, February, it still hadn't come in until just about a week or so ago we found some white paint. So prior to that we were doing a lot of yellow work, and then once we ran out of white paint it kind of delayed for a bit. But I'll give an update to council as to where we're at. I think I can dust off the old budget request for additional resources, send that around as part of the package, and let council prepare for the upcoming budget talks on maybe how we can do some things differently. We did look at outsourcing the line painting with another company besides the province for the center line painting to get it done quicker earlier in the year. But that would come at an extra increased cost in budget because currently the province is very reasonable in costing for how they charge the city for that service.
Thank you, Greg, appreciate it.
I'm just going to ask a question, if
Go
you don't
ahead.
mind, Bruce. Oh, Norma, I'm sorry.
sorry.
No, I guess just the question and the fact that you are going to maybe do a formal update on the signage and the painting, that would be really helpful. And I'm just wondering, Director Greg, we're not isolated in this situation. I'm sure there's other municipalities that are running into sourcing problems because of any number of factors. So do you feel or do you sense that that, you know, is happening in other municipalities? We're not isolated in that?
Yes, the province stopped painting with white paint and only kept it for their construction activities until just recently,
Yeah.
for the year as well, because we tried to source everywhere from anywhere in the Maritimes to abroad, to just seemed to be an industry-wide shortage of white paint in particular. That was traffic style, white paint. Even the stuff we're using now, we've had to adjust our paint use, like the type of paint we normally use. So we've adjusted to find some white paint, which is more maintenance and takes longer to clean the machines and things after its use. So we've adjusted how we can to try to keep things running, but it's a trying year on material supply for sure.
Okay, thank you.
And that was basically it, Councillor McColman, was the white paint issue. So it's really nice to know that we're kind of going to get back on track. And the city always looks so much nicer and cleaner when the lines are painted, and it's nice if we can get them done at the beginning of tourist season, and that being the problem this year. And it'll be nice to sit down with you, Greg, and go over what that might look like in the future. And it's nice that we can utilize the province at a reasonable rate. And if they would have had the white paint, that might have really made all the difference, in the world for this summer. So it'll be nice to sit down with you, and thank you for that.
Good, thank you. Councillor?
Yeah, no, I guess, Councillor McDougall, I was just gonna, suggest or ask that if the paint is becoming an issue, if in locations like this where it's an intersection, if those lines and markings could be temporarily, I don't know, supplemented by or substituted with the signage. I know with some of the roundabouts and a couple other locations, there is signs that say, it's a universal sign, you know what lane you're in by looking at the sign. I don't know if they can be attached to that arm.
Yeah, on this particular instance here at Ryan and Pope, there is a sign just outside that picture, about probably 5 meters back before the lane tapers in, that shows the lanes.
Right.
Which I think motorists might be missing a bit or disregarding. There was a review by Technical Services that stated we should have an additional sign farther up, closer to the corner, that says right turn only, which we're executing on for that inside lane on the right. The one that's left-hand turning, can't do much about that one. Yeah. We did look at putting signage on the traffic arms, but the traffic arm design can't support that size of sign for the wind load and things, which puts extra stress on the mechanical design of the arm. But we did look at it. So our best option is to add a sign in the right turning lane and go from there. See how it helps.
Okay.
Thank you very much. If there's nothing else.
No, I was just gonna
Oh,
add
can't
that
see your-
up this way a little bit. There's a fresh painted crosswalk. We've had construction up there for 3 summers in a row, so we've been kind of forgivable to the signing screws and stuff like that. Hopefully we'll have the new asphalt and all prettied up by the end of this week.
Good, thank you, Councillor Campbell. If there's nothing else, I'll adjourn the Municipal Services meeting. Thank you, Councillor.
And now we'll go
Goody.
to electrical. Councillor Campbell,
Ready, kilowatt.
happy birthday too, as of yesterday.
Yeah, sure. Got it.
I have committee of the whole. I have a recommendation here, and I'm gonna get Councillor Ramsey to repeat it for me.
Okay,
Okay.
I have mine here. So it's a recommendation, August 2nd, 2022. Recommendation, whereas staff have amended the rates and schedules policy manual from 2018 to 2022. Staff recommends adopting the amendments as identified in the attachment labeled 2022 RSP manual amendments. Supporting explanation. Purpose, to update the rates and schedules manual to provide support and clarification to operation and billings policy to operate the electric utility. Background, every 3 to 5 years, in-depth review and comparisons is conducted on the electrical utilities operations policy, billing practices, and development standards to ensure that the policies are consistent across the province and in the maritime provinces. Report, and it's to see the RSP manual in summary, and that's That's quite lengthy, and I would assume that would be online, Brian. Yeah, so that you can see that online. Cost and financial impact, not applicable. And recommendations is that the electric rates and schedule policy manual be updated from 2018 to 2022 by resolution at the next council meeting. And that's all
So
I
is
have.
that to be, just to follow up with a question there through Councillor Campbell or yourself, what happens after 22?
Well,
Are you recommending that it be every 4 years or something, or why are you picking this?
it's every
Yes, that's
3 to
correct.
5.
About between 3 and 5 years. This one was 4, so we usually try to get a review done to make sure electric utility is operating its business practice development standards consistently across the province and the Maritimes. So when developers develop, they know what to expect on here. There's also some, when you read through the document in detail, there's the original and the revised text in there, and mainly it's tightening up some rights of the city electric utility to enter into premises to get access to gear. There was some few loose ends that came up over time on making sure customers are aware that we need to have access to meters and we need to have access to certain equipment on their property. And we do coordinate in an ethical and civil way with people to try to coordinate when we can get access to those. So the other side of it, some of the other minor changes in here that get into was, there's really been no changes to development costs to developers, just some changing. We changed the Electrical Inspection Act, tightened that wording up to change with the provincial way they recognize their agencies. And the other side of it, what we added in was refusal of service. So it gave the electric utility a right to refuse service to certain applicants if they don't have certain things in order for the city to act on. So it's basically, we've had a lot of requests that come in and people aren't ready to be connected, or they don't have their plan thought out of how they're doing their service to their building. So that gives us the right to say, you guys need to get your stuff in order before we can help you out and service you. A lot of times we do above and beyond, and we'll help them through that process to help them along to get to that stage, but they still need to do the work they need to do to get service from the electric utility.
Just to follow up my question, and I'm not being critical when I say this, but are we adding red tape to the system? I'm just wondering that, you know.
No red tape. It's always been there.
Okay.
The electric utility needs to have certain information from the client, so this just helps us, gives us some rights to say, you know, in order for us to give you service, you need to have certain things that you need. Like, you need to have either a contractor involved or someone of that nature, or a professional to help you along on your own decisions. Because a lot of times, we don't want, as a utility, we don't want to make the decisions for the owner. They really have to make their own decisions on what they need.
I know over the last, well, whatever period of time you want, but we have policies and we have bylaws. And we get people calling, you know, with this or calling about that. And, you know, probably some of them giving the staff a hard time over something that the council passed and put it in place for whether it's building inspector or electrical or any department to enforce. And then but the council passes the policies and passes the bylaws, and then we get into discussions quite often about things. Well, how come that somebody had to wait this long and that long? I'm just wondering, to me, from the outside looking in here, that we may be adding some red tape, but maybe not. But I keep that in mind all the time from calls from people, you know. But I understand there has to be regulations, but the more regulations we put in, it makes it probably difficult for staff to enforce. And then council start getting calls about this and about that, and it's a policy that we passed.
And
I guess I'm just thinking out loud. Go ahead.
well, I think, sorry, but I think that's one of the things that we talked about not long ago regarding bylaw versus policy. A bylaw is a bylaw, and a policy is something that we could look at and not necessarily, well, I guess, make a different decision on it sort of immediately, rather than if it was a crisis that someone was in and we had to make a decision that we could, but when it's a bylaw that we can't, it has to go through a whole other process. And I think we just had that discussion not long ago, Your Worship.
Yeah. And
So
I think
that's,
too, with this, you mentioned something about the electrical act of the province, so is that we etching something in stone there too,
Well, everyone needs to have,
takes it away from the council's hands?
it is already in certain legislation of, there's a requirement for public safety in servicing with electricity. So that public safety is the duty of the province, which is under their Electrical Inspection Act. So until a utility can service anyone, they need to have an electrical pass by the provincial inspector. The city doesn't have their own inspector for that. So once we get that, then the service is usually given fairly shortly after. We are seeing, with the amount of work of late in the electric utility for service connections and requests, we've probably seen close to a 80% increase over last year. And last year was about a 40% increase over the year before that. So we're seeing a big boom in development, and that would lead to longer lead times of acting on the requests.
I kind of got a number of things in mind when I'm thinking about this. I know at the last meeting or two, we had discussion about portable signs. Somebody, well, we're only allowed 4. You know, we etch things in stone here, and then when we have to go back to deal with it, then, well, it's already in place. So I guess I'm a firm believer in try to remove as much red tape as possible, but I know some has to be there.
Yeah, so maybe I could comment a bit on that in the process. So
Okay.
the electric rate schedule policy manual is adopted by council. It gives the rules to utility on how to deal and operate for servicing customers and different standards, and also the rates for applicable stuff is in there as well, as long as the budget is approved under that. What that means is that anybody that has an issue with the rates and schedule policy manual as written, which is hopefully consistently acted and dealt out fairly in the community, that Summerside Electric Services, if they don't like that process, they always have an appeal to council to have that discussion. And there's probably many councillors here today that have been part of those appeals over the years. Of somebody has come in to challenge a part of the manual, and there has been amendments that have come in through that way. So this is a living document. It doesn't mean that it's a hard and fast rule, but if it's a very unreasonable request of the utility or the past practices of the utility, then the customer always has the right to come to council and have a discussion about that.
I'm just kind of thinking about building permits, because I think there's a clause in there that allows 10% variance for the staff for a little bit of wiggle room, but we've still got a percentage here for wiggle room for electrical staff and others. That's, like I said, I don't like the idea of painting ourselves into a corner or taking a lot of the authority away from council. I know you have to have regulations in place, and the staff has to enforce them, and they enforce them after council passes them, and then we come back and deal with things. Believer in removing as much red tape as possible, and you're saying we're not building more in.
And I think, Mayor Basil, I'll follow up on your several comments that I think we walk a very fine line as an elected official in council, but also having a policy with the, following the policies, because I think we have gone through some appeals and some reviews with people, and I think it's very important that we as a council, we don't have so many regulations, as you say, that it becomes very difficult for people. But on the other side of that coin, I think that it's really important that we have those boundaries in place so that we have a uniform process that really helps and works through a process for everyone, because otherwise we would be just having staff members change in midstream with a lot of things going on that they have to plan, a lot of logistical work that we haven't got the expertise in. And I think, if our residents know that we're following that and we're not trying to make it so regulated for them, but we do have a process and we're trying to follow those things, it's important for us.
On our policies, and then Councillor Phelan will be next, but in regards to our policies, all of the policies in place, and you can go back whatever number of years you want, not every councillor agrees with all of the policies, but we accept what the majority agree upon. And I'm sure that every councillor in here looks at all our policies, and probably we don't necessarily agree with them, but they're there. So, I've heard councillors over the years speak against the policy, and myself as well. But if it's passed by the majority, it becomes the policy that we live with.
Yeah, just, I guess when I read through this document, it's long, on the weekend, I thought that the change in text were really well done. Like, I think this is a significantly improved document from what was there in 2018. There was one thing that I'm trying to find here, but I couldn't find it. Around the notification for cutoff.
Oh, yes.
There was some change in wording in that.
There is, yeah. So we found in Hurricane Dorian, that rate and schedule policy manual, if we found an unsafe condition out there, we really tried to let the owner of the establishment know that they were, it was unsafe to leave it energized, so we'd have to actually force a disconnect. But we usually gave them notice and a letter before we did that, and also somebody to call in to help them through the process before we had to enact those. So that's really what the disconnect mean, I think, on the disconnects for those, it's for those damaged services that we see that are really unsafe, and we have to forcibly disconnect something due to safety.
Yeah, so contrary to sort of increasing the barriers, I guess I call them, I think this document really has removed some of those kinds of things and has really probably spoken to the complaints that have come up since 2018. So I think it's really well done.
Yes, that's it.
Can I just have one question, and it's not about this, Greg, but since you're here, and I'm just wondering about the street sweeper. Can you just give us a little update, because well, no, when did it arrive and how's it working? And I've had not a great experience with it, but that's neither here nor there. I'm just wondering what is happening with it.
Sure. So the new street sweeper started last week. It came in on Monday or Tuesday, I believe. I think Monday. Tuesday, started training, doing some things, and ran the machine. And initial results was that everybody thought the machine worked very well comparing to the last one.
Okay.
That it was picking up well, and it wasn't spitting out dust as bad as the other one either. So all in all, everything's working well.
Okay.
We haven't had a chance yet to test its catch basin cleaning yet, but that'll come.
Okay. Okay, and maybe I went by it like the very first minute it was out or something, but there was just lots and lots of dust, and I had the little car, and I was like, how am I going through that? So I didn't know it was a new one.
Well, there was a training period last week.
And that must have been it, yeah. So I just wanted to, Okay, that's great, thank you.
I saw it going today and working great, no dust from it.
So that's wonderful, yeah.
Okay, can I get back to my policy mandate? The street sweeper, this is gonna be read in as a resolution at our next council meeting.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
if anybody wants some good reading over the holidays.
And as your chair, Councillor Campbell, I'll second it.
Okay,
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all you have in that one then? We'll move on to Councillor Snow. Your community services next?
On community services is invasive species. I'm not sure who requested that to be put on either, but we'll turn it over to whoever did, and I think it's Councillor McFeely.
Councillor Snow, thank you. And I guess just as a preface, did you get that map from Trent? No, okay, never mind.
Nothing else? No. Okay.
We had I wouldn't say a complaint, but the issue was raised at a residence on Autumn Street. And Trent and I went and looked at that, and it really is quite significant out back behind these people's houses. But we've also had other issues throughout the city over the years, and we've even had some issues, I think, JP, in our own property that we deal with on an ongoing kind of basis, so that the city owns. So, and I guess when I look at other municipalities, and we really don't have a sort of a formal invasive species management plan. We really don't have I don't know if I don't think we need a bylaw. I don't believe we need a bylaw around that. But right now, I think staff are kind of out there to deal with each specific thing, and then when it becomes between homeowners, and we know in the past, particularly Bruce, one in your ward there, I think, has been a major one over the years, and very, very expensive to deal with. I think it's, it's not the same as a sort of a tree argument between neighbors that your tree's hanging over my fence. This stuff is nasty stuff that can grow and end up costing people big bucks to deal with with it. So I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what role the city should necessarily have in dealing with, with in essence is private property. But I do know that this is nasty stuff that has the potential to grow throughout the city, and if we don't have some way of keeping a lid on it, I don't know if you ever eradicate it, but there has to be some way of keeping the lid on it, and the argument, or I wouldn't call it an argument, the issue between neighbors is very difficult to manage, and not necessarily our role to be in the middle of that. But at the same time, when you look at the one on Autumn Street and you see that the thing is spreading over time, you know that those neighbors are going to be into a significant issue going forward. And I'm not sure that our unsightly premise bylaw, we have trouble trouble enforcing that to start with. And I'm not sure this would necessarily fall under it. It would be difficult, I think, to enforce it under that. So I don't know. I just thought I'd bring it to the table. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if it's something that staff can go back and take a look at. I know when I look at just kind of doing a little bit of research around what other municipalities are doing, and there are management plans. The various cities have management plans around invasive species. This particular one is that Japanese knotweed. There's others as well. But I don't know what the answer is, but thought we should bring it forward to committee for discussion and give some direction to staff. I think staff are in a very precarious position because there's really no right answer here, and when councillors get approached, and I know this particular one at Autumn came to me through Barb, really. We really don't have any, as a city, have any authority there, but is there something that we can do to at least keep it at bay, I guess. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Councilor McFeely. Councilor Adams?
I was wondering if it was Japanese knotweed, because we dealt with that out on Water Street East, and Trent was tremendous to help the resident, but what happened was it started in a ditch where there was a fire hydrant, so it had to be dealt with, and it was spreading to the residents. Another one I was going to ask about is cinch bug considered invasive?
Is it my place?
Yes. Yeah, because I've had a lot of calls, it seems just to be in certain areas about that, and Trent has went out, and what residents are finding is there's something in our bylaw that's keeping it from being treated in a certain way, and they have to actually hire the weed man and that to come in, but he'll only take on so many clients, so there's a waiting list for it. So I had a few residents reach out that they were like wondering if, as a city, we could do anything to up the amount or assist the weed man or whatever other company is doing it. So
I think under I forget even what the bylaw is called, JP, or our pesticide bylaw, or I can't remember the official name, but under that bylaw that council brought in a few years ago, there is a process to file an application basically to use the treatment that you need for cinch bugs. So.
So,
Councilor Ramsey?
Okay, thank you. I was looking at Brian because because I thought it was, okay. So is there something with the province, when we were dealing with this, Brian, with this particular lady, was there an email that came out from someone saying that the province had something that they could do? Am I remembering?
Yeah, the province,
I can't remember
but again,
exactly.
they don't, it's still in private property, like they still don't have any authority.
Okay. I just remember
deal with it?
something with the province that
Yeah.
they had some
They have,
kind of
you know,
solution.
They'll give you advice and give you,
Okay, that's
all
what it
all
is.
that kind of stuff, but the solution is very expensive.
Right,
With
right.
I'm wondering.
And the other, I just wanted to finish that, Corey. The other thing was the weed man. So I had an issue here in town, and I called a certain individual, and he said, Barb, I can't come to town because a few years ago there was a bylaw put in that stops me from coming in to do what I can do. And I did say that I would bring that up and just to see if there was anything that, you know, I don't know if it has to do provincially. It seems to just have to do with Summerside because he can work everywhere else, but he can't come into Summerside. So I'm not sure what's in our bylaw that is able, or that is stopping him from being able to come in and do the work that he needs to do. Is that making any sense? Because I wasn't on council at the time.
At a high level, it's making sense. So when council passed our pesticide control bylaw, there were processes put in place for applicators to get basically accredited to work in Summerside, and I am aware over the years that certain contractors have gone through that process to become accredited to work in Summerside, and others, to be honest, I haven't heard about this in a year or two, but I was aware previously that there were some contractors who decided no, they just, for whatever reason, didn't want to go through that process to become accredited to work in Summerside. So that may be the case in this case. I'm not 100% sure, but there are certainly rules and processes under that bylaw that create regulations. Like, it's not the Wild West in terms of what you can do. So. Yeah.
Right, yeah, because he said he had been working lots in Summerside. Most of his work was in Summerside, and then when this became a bylaw, he said, I lost all my work, but I have lots and lots of work now, and I have no need to come back to Summerside. But I know as a resident of Summerside, I needed someone in a hurry, and I couldn't find anyone. So I was kind of desperate as a resident, and he couldn't come in because he wasn't allowed. So I guess that was my concern, and I did tell him I'd bring it to council. And so it was a good opportunity to bring that up here today. So thank you.
So I'm wondering, just sort of wrap this up, maybe we can ask JP to compile some information on currently what we do with invasive species, what we can do in the going forward. Him together with Trent can present to council, because I don't think any of us are experts on invasive species. So
And we did do a kind of pan-Canadian scan a few years ago on invasive species and what different communities do, and like you said, there are no easy solutions. That's for sure. I recall kind of when we were looking at all the other communities, there wasn't a whole lot of meat kind of in some of.
No, but
and that's really because there's not a lot of options. But
and that was probably back 4 or 5 years ago. So I think things have evolved since then too, and maybe things are a little tighter in some areas, but you know, if we can really zero in on how you deal with, I mean, it's on private property. We really don't have any authority on that private property, but how do you deal with stopping this stuff from spreading and causing a neighbor to get into expensive solutions, really because the first neighbor didn't do anything, and like if you look at the one at Autumn Street, it's bad. It's really bad. The one in St. Elmer's there, this is getting almost to that extent.
That place in St. Elmer's is right around our water tower too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So I don't know what the solution is, but I know it's an issue, and I think the issue is going to become more acute.
And if I may, just if you're finished, Councillor Bryan, because I know we're on a time crunch here for a lot of people. I think it's the same as our regulations, say, around the fire, outdoor fire policies and like a lot of people, you know, think that council does certain things or whatnot. And I think the same with this invasive situation, with invasive species. What we run into is that some of this has to be responsibility borne by the province. And unless something comes in by the province, like we're in situations where we can't engage in that because we don't have anything to follow. And so it becomes like we're trying to deal with it. But as Councillor Bryan has said, we're just really running into trying to put something out that we don't have anything to stand on provincially. And I'm putting that out maybe through FPEI, Councillor Bruce, if there was something through FPEI that could be looked at, because that would affect a lot of municipalities. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councilor McCollum. I guess that's the end on invasive species. That looks the end of that.
You finished then, Councillor
Yes.
Snow? Okay, I guess we've gotten to the end of the agenda. I see there's an item for the committee of the whole. Motion to adjourn? And Brian will get us disconnected from YouTube.